From playing one of television's first openly queer characters to starring in a horror comedy set in Ireland, would you believe? This man is always doing something new.
He's not in Lima, Ohio anymore, though. He is back on Irish soil once again. Welcome to Ireland AM, Chris Colfer.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's so lovely to have you here.
It's so great to be back.
Does something happen when you hear that music?
I go into immediate PTSD.
Yeah, I was wondering.
I abandon self and kind of collapse inside.
Yeah, but you see, for a whole generation, you will always be Kurt from Glee.
I know, it's almost been 20 years since
I know.
I started.
Are you aging backwards?
Oh, God.
Is there a portrait in the attic? My God, 20 years.
I don't even ask my dermatologist what she does anymore. I just
do what you have to do.
Just say, the full works, please.
Yeah. But your character in Glee, whatever with the production and everything else, I mean, it was so important, and especially of its time, because your storyline, the first openly gay character, many people would have seen on screens. I mean, I remember watching it and crying because such emotional storylines that you had through that. Yeah. What was it like going through that?
I mean, it was incredibly rewarding because I got to affect so many lives, and I was lucky enough to help change hearts and minds, which is, an honor of my lifetime. But behind the scenes, it got a little scary because there was a lot of violence and a lot of threats that came my way. So it was a lot to take on and required a lot of bravery for a very young person to get through that.
That whole thing, though, it didn't slowly take off. It took off like a Polaris missile.
Yeah, it was overnight.
Yeah, huge. At what stage did you realise, OK, my life has changed?
I remember when the first 3 episodes aired in the United States, we were away in Australia promoting the pilot out there. And I remember when we landed back at LAX in the United States, I was recognized in the airport for the first time in my life, and since then I have never not been recognized when I've been outside. So that was the moment that it all changed.
Since the plane ride over, you kind of went to Australia, a normal guy, you came back a star.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Which is huge. And there's been a lot of rhetoric over the years. I mean, there's so many tragedies associated with these sad
unfortunately,
losses of life, of course, and a lot of talk about toxicity on the set. And these things happen inevitably, especially in big productions. But when you mentioned PTSD, when you look back at it, but with that as well, I mean, you had to grow up really quickly and deal with all that toxicity and all that negativity while on set. How did you manage it as such a young man?
Thank God we had each other. The cast had each other, and that we were all kind of going through it together. And we're still very, very close to this day. We had some major trauma bonding on that set. But I think that's also why our friendships are so strong today. And we really, truly are a family because we went through a lot, highs and very lows together.
Yeah, and with it came rewards as well, but the Emmy, I mean, that must have been a moment.
That was pretty good. That was pretty great. Yes, I was nominated for 2 Emmys and won a Golden Globe for the performance. So that was pretty great. Yeah.
No, it is. It's a testament to the work that you put in and the dedication.
Oh, thank you.
So well done. We've also got to add New York Times bestselling author.
Yes.
To your list of achievements.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Was that author kind of lurking and waiting for Kurt to step to one side so that you could say, "Oh, I can do this too"?
Well, it's funny because when I was a kid, writing and acting kind of hit me at the same time because when I was a kid, they're just both different versions of playing pretend. But I've always wanted to be a writer. I've been writing for as long as I can remember. So I'm very glad that that Glee kind of gave me those opportunities to become a writer because it's my full-time gig.
Oh, okay. Well, what is it your mother said to you?
Yeah. Oh, yes. So she'd read me fairy tales at bed every night. And I was very, very curious and very nosy about these characters and their motives. And I had a lot of questions. And she finally just said, "Christopher, if you have so many questions, just write your own damn stories." And so I did. And it's been, thank God it's worked out.
Don't you need in your life? You need a Tony.
Yes.
And I don't need an award. I need the Tony box.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say no, but...
You can just read your story straight to it and hit the play button and it will come back to you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Were you always a voracious reader, though? Apart from your mother reading, did you explore loads of different genres or did you kind of want the fairy tale things and a bit of escapism?
Yes, I was a very big reader, which is interesting because I actually recently, later in life, got diagnosed with dyslexia. So reading was always a big challenge for me, but I still tried my best and, devoured any fantasy novel that I could get my hands on.
And it can be such an escape, especially if you're struggling a bit and you want to go into a kind of a new world.
Yes,
I was
yeah,
like
no,
to say, I
yeah.
dived into all those books. It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's the magic of books. Is like it is a different world, an escape, a vacation, just at the tip of your fingers.
So tell us then about how you segued into writing it and where you got the ideas for it. Like, it's some achievement, 20 books.
Yeah, I'm actually writing my 22nd book right now. Yeah. I mean, I think
How
part
did it
of
all start then?
I think part of it is mental illness. I think, no, I think
I can relate. Yeah.
no, my books, especially my first series, the Land of Stories series, which is my most popular. Those characters and those adventures were just that was the adventures I wanted to have as a kid with the characters that I grew up loving and reading about.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not the first author to say, look, by the way, I'm also dyslexic. And an acclaimed author once said, I don't need to be a good speller to tell a great story.
No, especially with spell check now, which is very nice.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you can even check the grammar too.
You can, yeah, it's great.
Brilliant. But this has been optioned as well.
Yes, yeah. So we're in early development with Warner Brothers right now, turning the first Land of Stories book into a feature film. It's been great. I mean, the books have sold, I think, around 15 million copies worldwide. So I think this is a great next step for the project.
And it can be absolutely huge when we have these adaptations into the silver screen. I know the folks of The Faraway Tree is now going to be soon gracing our screens, and of course, when you think of the Harry Potter adaptations,
yes.
There's so many. But how do you feel about giving that over to somebody else to translate what's in your head onto a screen?
You know, luckily we are in very good hands right now, and I'm also one of the producers, so I have a lot of say and control over what the final product will be. But our screenwriter is Phil Johnston, who wrote the Wreck-It Ralph movies and Zootopia, and I think he's one of the most brilliant screenwriters working right now. So I know it's in great hands, and I'm supposed to be getting the first draft of the script very soon.
Oh, exciting!
Okay. Sometimes a book can stay as an option for a lot of years.
Yes, it can.
The fact that you are Chris Colfer and you've got Golden Globe and a couple of Emmys to your name, does that push it along just a little bit more?
Honestly, I think it actually hurt me in the long run because I think a lot of people, when they'd hear my name, they would associate me with Glee so much they wouldn't have room for anything else. So it actually took a lot, I think almost more effort to really convince people like no, look at the numbers. Like these books are it's its own living, breathing thing and is worthy of an adaptation.
So it must be frustrating as well in a way for that to happen, that you're kind of pigeonholed into that one character, that one role, because it's difficult to break out of that.
Oh, it's very difficult. Yeah. And I think I'm so glad that like my aspirations were in an entirely different field, because I don't know if I could have ever really truly made it as an actor alone. So I'm very, very lucky that I could write and that I wanted to and I had the opportunity to.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're back in Ireland.
Yes.
Okay. Now a name like Colfer, there has to be a connection somewhere.
Yes, a very Irish name.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I actually met I have never met another Colfer in my whole life that I wasn't related to. But on the plane here, I met my first Colfer in the wild. It was very surreal.
So Colfer, not blood related.
Not blood
in any way.
I mean, we might be related. Who knows?
I'm sure if there was a genetic test, it's 23andMe.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You'd be somewhere connected along the line.
Or something.
Yeah. Of course, Colfer is a great literary name as well in Ireland. We've owned
got
Colfer as well.
Yeah, and I loved his books when I was a kid too.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, look, let's talk about why you're back in Ireland, because you spent quite a bit of time here filming a movie.
Yes. So I lived here for 3 months in 2024, shooting this film. It is an outrageous horror comedy about, I think, probably the most dysfunctional mother-son relationship that's ever been on film.
Oh no, that's a bold statement now, because there's been several very dysfunctional.
Yeah. Even Psycho, I think, is less dysfunctional than the one in this film. Yes. Yeah. But I had an absolute blast doing it. It was written and directed by Irish filmmaker Glenn McQuaid. And I think it's one of my most favorite acting jobs I've ever had.
Okay, restoration at Grayson Manor.
Yes, yeah.
Stradbally Hall became Grayson Manor.
Yes.
And let's just say you and the rest of the cast and the crew weren't the only people there. where at
No.
least there might have been a few spirits.
Yes, I'm convinced that it was very haunted.
Are you joking me now, or are you just saying that now to plug the film?
No. I mean, that's actually a great marketing tool. But I would be in my dressing room upstairs, which used to be the old maids' quarters, and my clothes on my clothes rack would just like mysteriously move as if a hand would brush them. Yeah, and like sometimes the door would open and close on its own, and there'd be knocking, and I would go to the door, and there'd be no one there, and I have a lot of it on video actually.
Oh, you got
Yes.
all right.
Yeah, I should have brought the footage. But, but so I'll be sharing that soon.
So
Okay.
did that lend to the atmosphere then?
I think so. They were friendly ghosts, though. They were pretty friendly.
Casper.
I think they just felt more like curious than demonic or anything.
Yeah.
So was the maid kind of shifting the clothes to say, this is what you should wear today?
Maybe, yeah. Or clean this place up. Who knows?
So the actual plot of this story then, your character is far removed from Kurt.
Yeah, oh, very. Yeah, it's unlike anything I've ever I've gotten the chance to do before.
What was your reaction, or how did you get the script in the first place, I suppose?
Well, I remember my agent sent me the script, and my agent said, "This script is out there. It's pretty bonkers, but I really like it, so I hope you enjoy it too." And I remember reading it, and it was one of the most twisted, diabolical things I'd ever read. And I knew on page 2 that I'd be attaching myself immediately.
On page 2?
On page
Right.
2,
Wow.
I knew. Yeah, because it was also one of the best scripts I'd ever read. And the story is very, very out there. I mean, I play a character who gets his hands tragically cut off, and then he gets robotic hands, and the robotic hands sort of come to life and have a mind of their own. But it's one of the best written stories I've ever read.
So you can't control your robotic hands?
Or can I?
I see.
Who controls who?
Yeah. And ironically, it was a very hands-on experience.
Well, I can't.
But
Yeah, but I'm
There we go.
saving that one.
Yeah.
you got out of there just as Electric Picnic was rolling in.
Yes, yeah, they were setting up as we were wrapping.
You weren't tempted to hang on, were you?
I kind of was because it looked like a lot of fun, but no, I had to leave right after the shoot, but otherwise I would have stayed.
Okay, you need to come back and do that.
Yes, sounds like
You
it.
need to come
yeah.
back and bring the old maid and the rest of the ghosts.
I will.
This film is showing, though, in the
Yes.
Dublin International Film Festival.
Yes,
Tell us about that.
Yeah, very excited. It's having its Irish premiere on a Saturday at 6:30 at the film festival, and I think all of us are very, very excited to be back home and showing it to the people that helped create it.
Okay, it's great to meet you.
Yeah,
it
thank you
really
for
is.
having me.
Have you?
There's a lot of excitement around the house
Yeah.
over the last 48 hours or so since we were told that you'd be here and joining us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you
for coming
appreciate
in.
it.
And your hair is spectacular. It's defying
thank you.
gravity.
I hope
I
it's still-
love it.
hope it's still up.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We need to take a moment for the hair. It has to be
Yeah.
done at this
I
hour of the morning.
appreciate it. 2 good cans of hair lacquer went into that. It's still
listen,
standing
yeah.
tall. All right.
Chris, it's so lovely to meet you and chat to you, and best of luck in this movie. I cannot wait to see it, even though it's a bit of a spoiler alert that you gave earlier
Restoration
on.
of Grace and Manor.